Welcome back to the page, guys. I hope you're all well. So in the last video on this Volvo, you'd have seen that we were removing the engine. As you can see, it's on the floor behind me. And I did say that we were going to spend a little bit of time with Rich, who is here behind me, as he's going to explain what modifications have already been done to this engine, what he thinks is wrong with it, as you may have heard at the start of the last video, that the engine was revving up quite badly on its own, and what modifications he's going to be doing going forward to get the engine repaired or to a state where he's able to make some serious power. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to grab the camera, I'm going to shut my mouth, and I'm going to let Rich over here do some talking.
Cheers for that, mate. Yes, so I wanted to go through what I've got here with this engine and some of the bottom modifications which I've done in the pursuit of power, and I was looking for a bit of reliability as well. And in doing so, it seems that I've made a little bit more work for myself than was anticipated. So I knew the engine was going to have to come out. So I thought, yeah, at this point now, I'm in a position where I can actually get the engine built. So first things first, what we'll go into is the nuke fuel rail, which we have just down here. And as you can see, as it has the Swedish flag on there, it comes all the way from Sweden, as do a lot of the parts from nuke. We've got the nuke fuel rail, and we also have the nuke FPR 100. That's a fuel pressure regulator that will do up to E100, and that comes with a gauge as well, so you can see the actual fuel pressure that you're running. This unit is completely adjustable, so you can run whatever fuel pressure you want as long as your fuel system's up to that. And then we also have Bosch EV14 1000cc injectors, which are going into a stock 850 manifold for the turbo car. Now, part of the reason why I believe that it's revving up is that I've fitted a larger catch can than what is compatible with this intake manifold. I've fitted an original unit which would have been with this engine, and I believe that it's just slightly kicked off, which is giving it an air leak, which is obviously drawing air into the intake, and it's obviously unfiltered, unmetered air, and is basically making it rev up. The engine itself comes from a Volvo S60 or Volvo V70 T5, but on the facelift. So that's roughly from the years 2004 up to around about 2000, 2008. Sorry, 2007, 2008. And that's the 2.4 litre, which is considered to be one of the strongest units that Volvo produced in stock form. These have been known to produce in excess of 450, 500 brake horsepower, which, considering when it came out of the factory it was only 260 horse or thereabouts, is quite an achievement for a standard engine. To get this package to work in the 850, there is a couple of things that you need to do. Again, this is more on the bottom side, and it's only small things, but it makes all the difference. So the later series to the 850 was a S70 and a V70. That was your classic shapes. They run a newer style of engine, and one of the things which is needed from that engine is this front engine mount down here. So that then is compatible with the 850 subframe or that series of subframe from the S70 or V70. So there's one modification straight away, which is, it's something you wouldn't even see. Next, we've got the gearbox, which is, again, like I mentioned in the last video, is very, very similar to what's in a Focus ST, but it's also very similar as well to a Focus RS. This is a Volvo gearbox. It's called an M66 gearbox for front-wheel drive cars and for all-wheel drive cars, depending on the platform. This particular gearbox in Volvos is found usually in T5s, and that would be in C30, the S40, V50 and the C70, and usually it would be a T5, which would be a couple of things modification wise. Again, to be able to get it to work in a 1995 car, is that the top selector arms here have been manipulated differently and adapted to be able to. There is then some extra additional bracketry to actually hold the selector cables in place, which you wouldn't normally have these in this configuration. Then coming round to the we've got an arrangement which holds the rear gearbox mount, which is made up out of some box section here. Now, I can't take the credit for these. I didn't produce this or this or this. This was done from a previous owner. Then, where I'm standing here, we've got the big spoolie boy. This is a genuine Garrett GTX 3071R Gen 2. Has a T3 flange, which is mad because the Volvos of this era didn't use Garrett turbos, but it's almost like they wanted you to have it because the flange, which is on the exhaust manifold, has had an adapter added onto it, but it bolts directly straight up to it. So it's almost as if it was like, come on, get that big turbo on there so we can make some power. So we've got that onto there. Again, another modification which has been done. Still around the back of the engine, we've got a uprated, or what is uprated for this engine, oil cooler at the back. Now this oil cooler comes from a diesel variant of this engine. It's from a D5, but again, like the engine itself, it's from the facelifted version of the D5, so it'd be a Euro 4 instead of being Euro 3. This is obviously going to help massively with cooling the oil and getting the temperatures down, obviously, inside the engine. It's a big thing with these Volvo engines is heat and dealing with heat and heat management. So obviously hoping that having that there is going to be able to help that. This little box thing here, I don't know if any of you noticed that I've got on the top of the engine here. This is the ECU, it's the brain of the madness here, you know, that I have in front of me. But this isn't your everyday ECU, or it's not anymore. As you might be able to see, there's a little blue cable here. And this has been converted so we can do live mapping on a laptop with a lead that goes from this to a laptop. But as well as that, it's also been converted for coil on plug, because originally the 850 wouldn't have had coil packs. It had a single coil with a distributor cap, and then 5 individual leads going to each spark plug. Whereas now we've got an arrangement where we have 5 coil packs in the top of the engine. So even that in itself is a little bit of a trick piece there. Like I touched on a little bit earlier in the earlier video, we've got some DO88 silicon hoses. These cars now and a lot of the parts that are involved with them are knocking on for 30 years old now, so the rubber parts are perished. It's getting hard to find original replacement parts for these from Volvo. I'm in, the belief that if you're gonna be fitting parts to your car, they need to be of high quality. Not saying there's anything wrong with OE or OEM equivalents, but for my personal preference, I like to either replace it or take that standard up a little bit. So we've got the DO88 coolant pipes here, which you can see. One quick last mod. We've got an original 850 series thermostat housing here. And the reason for that is that we can have the original 850 ancillary package, which is obviously on the front of the engine here. You've got the power steering pump at the top. You've got the alternator. And originally it would have had a air conditioning compressor at the bottom here. And part of the reason that we're using this thermostat housing is obviously so we can have this package here. Follow me around here and I'll get onto the gearbox. So the last time I was on the Dreadlock Mechanics page, I was giving him a hand and he was giving me a hand with installing a quaif diff into this gearbox. This was a replacement gearbox, a low mileage replacement gearbox, because the gearbox, the M66 that was in the car at the time, some of the brass bushings had failed and I couldn't select first and third gears. So that's a bit of an inconvenience in itself. So we swapped it out for this very low mileage M66 unit, and I've put a quaif ATB in there as well. Coupling the gearbox to the engine, or the engine to the gearbox, we've got a TTV ultralight racing flywheel. As it says and as it sounds, that is an ultralight racing flywheel which is in there. It's got a 6-paddle clutch which doesn't have any springs at all, and we've got an Audi S2 Satch 707 pressure plate in that package there. So hopefully it'll be able to handle whatever amount of torque that I'm going to throw at it. So now we've gone through some of the mods which have been added to the engine and the gearbox. Follow me over this way. I'd like to talk about a few things that are in the engine bay. Here's a little bit of trivia for you, and something that will take many, many people back, I am sure. Because this car's a 1995, it's pre-OBD2, or what we know now as OBD2. So these cars came with OBD1. And basically, you'd piggyback pins, and you'd push this button here to find out what was up with your car, if you had any lights on the dash, or if you felt something wasn't right. It's quite a cool thing that I've kept there, even though it's no longer in use, because the car has been now converted to OBD2. I use the OBD2 for data logging, so we can do data logging as well as live mapping all at the same time. On the front end, we've got, and on the rear end, we've got BC Racing coilovers, which are camber adjustable with pillar ball top mounts, so they will never ever wear out. And we can also adjust the dampening here for about 30 points of dampening. It's quite cool. A little bit more inside the engine bay, we've got a MPRE from Sweden engine mount on the, what would be the driver's side. The subframe is taken from a Volvo C70 Cabriolet, and the reason why I've added that addition into the car is because these particular subframes come with solid mounting, or almost solid mountings to the car. I'm just trying to increase that rigidity in the car to gain as much as I can from what's been produced from the engine and gearbox. As well as it being a solid mounted subframe, it also comes with a V strengthening brace, which is added into the subframe. Going back slightly then, as we're working our way back along the car, we've got a IPD from America anti-roll bar. This is the Black Series anti-roll bar on this car, which is part of their race series. They do a little bit softer motorsport sort of variant, road car, fast road car variant. Those usually are in blue, but this one's got the black version. That comes with its own poly bushes as well. So for me, on a high performance car, I genuinely believe in Michelin. I've used them quite a lot for many, many years. And on this vehicle, I'm running Michelin Pilot Sport 5s. Tyre size wise, we're running 225 40/18s. Wheels wise, at the moment, I've got a set of Team Dynamic Pro Race 1.2. These are an old touring car wheel, what was used back in the day on touring cars. They're a nice lightweight wheel, but they are still incredibly strong. And brakes wise, we've got Brembo 4-pots, which originally would have been on a Alfa Romeo Brera, I believe it was. And I'm running a 336mm disc, which would have been on the Volvo XC90 SUV. That's quite interesting. And then at the back of the car, I'll show you what we've got going on there. So here at the back of the car, we've got the rear brakes. So these have been converted, which originally would have had solid discs on the back. And I'm now running Volvo S60R or Volvo V70R vented discs, 330mm disc there, and I'm running the Volvo S60R V70R calipers, Brembo 4-pots as well. So that gives me Brembo 4-pots all round. Just as another little side note, as far as the handling and characteristics of the car, I've got additional C bracing underneath the car, so it's got chassis bracing underneath, and I've got the original Volvo OEM optional extra there, which would have been available for the S70, V70 and C70 phase ones on those cars from Volvo, which, because it's the same platform as this car, it works on it. It wasn't something that was available for an 850 at all. It came a few years later, but like I say, because it's the same platform, you can share those parts. So I've got a nice strut brace as well.
So there you go. As you've just heard Rich going over exactly what has already been done to this engine. And as you'd have seen in the first video, the engine was revving up quite badly on its own. And as Rich has already explained, it is down to the vacuum leak that we've got on the bottom of the inlet manifold just down here. Now, one thing that he didn't get into was the bits that he was going to be doing to this engine to make that power that he was talking about earlier on. So what exactly did you have planned for this engine?
My plan, pretty much from as soon as I got the car, I've always had a number in my head. I always wanted 400 wheel horsepower. That was my plan. So
Mm-hmm.
somewhere around about the 460, 480 brake, maybe even 500 brake horsepower. That was what I wanted. Now, I thought with having this engine, it's the package which could work for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're getting very, very close to the limit, like we discussed a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But I thought, yeah, this is the way I want to go. But now I'm in a position where I thought, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it once. I'm going to do it right.
Yeah, it kind of makes a bit of sense.
Yeah, 100%. So as a package, this is the best package you're going to get and best bang for your buck as far as power from a completely standard unit that hasn't been opened.
Like fresh out the box from Volvo, you could go and buy any
Yeah.
car off the marketplace, eBay or Outrider,
Yeah.
anywhere like that, and it would come with pretty much what we've got in front of us, minus of the obvious things, the goodies like the fuel rail sensors and the turbo and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So all the stuff that I've bolted on, you wouldn't obviously get, but like you say, this package is the best bang for buck. Everybody knows, like with the 2.5 litres that you get in an ST and an RS, and then the Volvo equivalents, which we touched on earlier, they do suffer quite a bit with the liners. They'll crack.
Yeah.
The 2.4s don't seem to have that issue because there's a little bit more meat on the internals.
Right.
So it's able to deal with heat, something as well that we touched on a little bit earlier.
Well, heat dissipation, like you say, with these is quite a big thing. They do run quite hot.
Yeah, they do.
So trying to keep them cool is kind of half the battle, really, like you said.
100%. So going forward for the new package, which we're going to be building, I'm getting rid of the cylinder head.
Yeah, that's going in the bin.
That's going. I'm going back to an old school style 850 T5 or T5R or R head.
Yeah.
All the heads are exactly the same. But it's potentially going up to Rickwood's and it's going to be CNC ported up there.
Yeah.
So we're going to be able to have the maximum flow that that head will be able to produce. It will be exactly the same as if I took this cylinder head up to Rickwood's, but there's a reason why I'm going to go with that head as well, which comes down to camshafts because I want to put more aggressive cams into it. This cylinder head and this engine runs with VVT on the exhaust and on the intake.
Yeah, you can see you've got the
pulleys on.
controllers.
You've got the controllers there, solenoids there, and then the pulleys are obviously all fed as well.
Yeah.
The older style cams and the pulleys, they don't have any variable valve timing. So that gets away from this electronic side here.
Yeah.
I don't really want to go down that route with the current ECU setup.
Right, okay.
So N series head, which is what it is. These engines are called RNC, so it's a revised N series head.
Yeah, yeah.
So N series was the original. So we're having one of those cylinder heads, larger springs for the valve, so going up to 40 kilogram springs, uprated retainers. We'll have new solid lifters in the cylinder head as well, new valve stem guides, valves reground and profiled as well,
So it's
for maximum flow.
going to be pushing some serious power then.
Yeah, I mean,
coupled with the bottom end that
well,
you've
yeah,
got in store as well.
Yeah.
It's
and
not all just head work. It is
no,
coupled with that bottom end. So
and this is it. So like going on to the bottom end, these have an 81 millimeter sleeve in them, the standard. So I'm going to take that up to an 82.5 mil sleeve, running 83 mil pistons. So that gives some allowance then for machine work to be able to be carried out on the sleeves before we get the pistons. Also, the deck's going to be closed on this, so these have an open water jacket system as standard. The deck's going to be closed again to be able to deal with heat, makes it stronger. The crankshaft which is in this, I'm probably not going to be using either, so I'm going to change that for an S60R crank, which I've got at home. That's in another engine.
So it's not really going to be a completely standard engine, is it? It's going to be a bit of a Frank build at the same time. It's
100%.
a bit of this, a bit of that.
Yeah.
Something else from there, something else from there, all chucked together to kind of make what, in your eyes, is the ultimate engine for, again, in your eyes, the ultimate Volvo.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm not just doing this off my own back. I've watched a lot of builds, over the years, and I've got to take this opportunity for a big shout out to Simply Volvo, YouTube guy. Matt over in the United States has really pushed the envelope with these cars. In fact, he's done it on a black 854 T-5R as well also.
So it's identical to this one that's behind us now.
Yes, he's kept the factory wheels because he does. Over in the States they do some sort of drag racing on oval tracks. So they start 60 mile an hour. They'll run down the back straight, and whoever gets the top speed at the gun or the marker point, that's the winner. It's not who crosses the line first, but it's whoever gets that track speed. Yeah, the highest track speed. So he's done a mad build on his. I mean, his car's now all-wheel drive, and it's pushing around about 820 all-wheel drive at the wheels. So that's the equivalent of, I don't know, what?
Is it 1,000 brake horsepower plus maybe?
Yeah, easily, comfortably, yeah.
So it's a serious bit of kit, you know what I mean? It's not your average run-of-the-mill Volvo that you'd see a little old woman pooping into church on a Sunday. You know what I mean?
No, definitely not. And even down to what I'm going to be using as far as bearings. You know, I'm going to use Glyco splitter bearings on one side of the conrods, and then on the other side it's standard Glyco bearings just to help reduce any chance of the shell spinning. Glyco then main bearings as well also. Probably will end up having new thrust washers as well for the crankshaft for end flows.
Make sure there's no end flow.
Yeah.
No excessive end flow.
Yeah, well, yeah. So as you know, you've got to have a touch, haven't you?
You've got your tolerances to
100%.
make sure it's within spec.
Yeah. This, like we touched on a little bit earlier, is now it's an old unit. You know, it's from, I don't know exactly what year, but it will be anywhere from 2004, 2005-ish to 2008. So it's an old engine.
So it's at least 20 years old.
Potentially knocking on 20 years, so 16 to 20 years.
Worst case. So
worst case. Worst case, 20 years old. So it needs a refresh. And yeah, that is the plan.
That's pretty much what it's going to be having now. And before we can get to the point where we're chucking all this nice, shiny goodies at it and making that kind of power, all of this is going to have to get pulled apart.
Yep.
And I think that is exactly what we need to crack on with now. And yeah, maybe get something to eat and then start pulling all this apart. So if you guys want to see the content of this being pulled apart, it's not going to be a 5-minute process, as there's lots to it. But if you guys want to see it nonetheless, all you got to do is drop a comment in the comment section below.
Here's one. IKEA hot dogs. Oh, it's Swedish connection. Hot dogs food. God. IKEA hot dogs in the comments if you want to see the video of this getting tore apart.
What's this going on about? But nonetheless, we're going to get this thing pulled apart now, either way. And if you guys want to see that happening, like he says, drop a comment, something to do with IKEA hot dogs, I don't know. But nonetheless, I hope you enjoy watching these videos just as much as I enjoy making them. And as always, thanks for watching, thanks for following. You know how it goes. Fucking meat.